through either an innate understanding or now 20 plus years in this business, I know what my job is, or at least I have an idea of what it is, and I stick to that lane. And I think directors and other cast members really appreciate that.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Hassiem Muhammad, and you are listening to The Actor's Instrument: Tools for the Long Game. You know the drill. Before we dive in any further, could you please do me a favor? Could you hit that subscribe button if you're listening on YouTube, or if you're following us on any streaming platform? Please like this episode, give us a follow. We're trying to add 100 new subscribers this month, so please help us out. Our tour of the regional markets outside of the traditional hubs of New York and Los Angeles continues. I want to know what opportunities these smaller markets have across the film, TV, and theatrical mediums. What's the cost of living like? How realistic is it to work consistently? And ultimately, how to build a career as an actor living wherever you want to be. This week, we're headed to the DMV, and it's not to renew our license. Joining me this week on The Actor's Instrument is Cody Nickell. Cody is here representing the DC, Maryland, and Virginia tri-state area. As an actor, he's worked all over the country at theaters such as Woolly Mammoth, Folger, Portland Center Stage, the Shakespeare Theater, Art and Theater Company, the Wilma Theater, Shakespeare Santa Cruz, and Roundhouse Theater, where he and I did a production of The Tempest. He is a graduate of Carnegie Mellon University, and did I mention he is a 5-time Helen Hayes Award nominee. Cody, thank you for joining me.
Hassiem, thank you for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So good to see your face, man. It's been 2 years.
Yeah, it has. Two and change.
Ooh.
Yeah.
It felt like it was just yesterday. We were all in the dressing room, pulling wardrobes over our extremely sore bodies.
You especially, man. I mean, it really was a hell of a production, and one of the highlights of my career, kind of under any metric. And yeah, I'm thrilled to get to reconnect with you after that. And it's nice to see your face.
Same, man. No, we're speaking about the DC market, the DMV market today. And like, for me, what that production was, it was my first time working in the DMV. And I immediately got to work with what I would say like a cohort of actors who regularly work in the DMV, who are considered mainstays in that market. Not to blow, smoke up your skirt, but that's what I was told. The first day I arrived, one of our cast members, Ryan, he was like, you see this person, you see that person. He's like, they work all the time. And, just surrounded by a powerhouse cast, including yourself.
The first day of rehearsal, like the read through, I was shocked. And then just about the talent in the room and the talent that was being brought to bear on this production. And then when we did our first stumble through, I'm not sure I've ever had the same feeling as I had in that room, which was everybody's working at 10. Everybody is A game. And each little piece of the show had this superb quality. And it's rare that you get that. And it was just a tremendous, and your work on that was astounding. It was tremendous. It was literally a heavy lift. And
it was indeed.
And you guys pulled it off with aplomb, man. It was very cool.
And thank you. No, I remember distinctly early in the process, our director, Aaron Posner, he was like, yeah, this is going to be a hit. And he said it like that. It was like kind of nonchalant. He's like, this is going to be a hit. And I remember thinking like, he's pretty confident. Like, I like it. I respect it. But like, how do you know what I'm saying? It's live theater. How do you know? Yeah. And it was a hit. Like when I say record breaking.
Yeah.
I mean, we broke all the box office records at the theater. Yep. We were sold out like the entire run, full house every single night.
Yeah.
It was special.
Yeah. It was and hard. I mean, that was one of the hardest contracts I've ever come across. And I didn't have to, lift another dude for 2 hours like you did. But, it was a long haul. It was a long rehearsal process. It was a long tech process. But the rewards of it were absolutely tremendous. I mean, certainly the success of the show was important. But as you say, like when you brought up the idea of these DMV actors that are heavy hitters, that are kind of a cohort of people who work a lot, getting to be in that room with those people and to expand the people that we knew, because there were people from New York and there were people from Vegas or, wherever, and like coming in and working in different gigs. Texas, and I dig. I mean, it's one of my favorite things about the regional market in general is that you're pulling from all over the country and you're getting to cross pollinate. And it's such an important thing, I think, to really get to see other people's work, how other communities. It's really how I built my career, was living in New York and then going to the regional market, going to California, going to North Carolina, going to DC or Philly, and like to stretch your legs and really get to see what the different markets offer, what the acting styles are like there, what the directing styles are like there, what audiences respond to. It's just a fascinating piece of this larger ecosystem that, as you said at the top of the show, gets reduced to LA and New York. I mean, justifiably, because that's where most of the money is, and that's where you generally have to go, especially starting a career. That is the received wisdom is that you need to go to New York or LA.
Now, I love where you're taking this conversation, because I want to dive deep into your career, what led you to the DMV. Before we hop on that very specific train, what I'd love to know, observing you, our time working together, you're what people would probably consider an actor's actor, a working actor, a professional. Like, acting is what you do. And that's, again, no fluff or frill. Like, that, it's what you do. It's what
Sure.
you do as a professional. What I would love to know is, what do you consider the quality that you bring to the table as a storyteller that sets you apart?
You asked this question of some of the other actors that you had on the podcast, and I was trying to think about what I would say. And there's the very simple, like, I show up on time. Like the basics, like I do the basic, like I'm kind, I'm collaborative, I love what I do. I know how to, like, how much of my ego to bring in the room and how much to leave out of the room. I think that is all true, but I beyond that kind of basic stuff, I would say that I bring an earnestness and a dedication to the craft, and a really specific knowledge dramaturgically of where I fit into production. I think I have, through either an innate understanding or now 20 plus years in this business, I know what my job is, or at least I have an idea of what it is, and I stick to that lane. And I think directors and other cast members really appreciate that, because I have a big picture idea about shows, but I know how to kind of put that aside and, like, this is my part of this, and I'm this part of the symphony, and I need to be the best at that in this production.
Man, I love that response. It's not one I've gotten yet, but it's so important to know, like, what is the part that you're playing in this whole process. And when I was doing a little more research into your career, I didn't realize that you directed.
I have done some directing, yes.
And I can only imagine what you just described is somewhat influenced by your time as a director.
Certainly.
Just making assumptions.
Certainly.
Yeah,
I think in my time as a director and in my time working on new plays, world premieres, or workshops of new plays, and I think Shakespeare, because you really, a director, obviously you have to have a larger picture. You have to see kind of where all the instruments in the symphony are and how to bring that out. And it's not like I've done a ton of directing. I've directed 5 or 6 professional shows, and, coming up through college, I directed some stuff. But every time I come out a better actor. Like, I mean, it really is. I mean, if you can, advice for anyone, if you can sit on the other side of a table in an audition room, if you can be a reader, if you can be an assistant, like, to see some of how directors process actors, even in an audition room, will help you as an actor. And if you are fortunate enough or hungry enough or tenacious enough, and you want to get on that other side of the table and direct, do it, and it will make you a better actor. I mean, hands down, it will make you a better actor.
Excellent advice. So could you talk us through, because I know your career did not begin in the DMV. I know you've worked in New York and other places as well. Can you kind of take us through your trajectory to landing in DC?
Absolutely.
Or the DMV area, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the DMV I think is the preferred term. I'd say DC all the time, but whatever. I think people will understand, and DMV does confuse some people, as you alluded to at the top of the
Like,
show. Or
you,
get
you
your
work at
license?
the Department of Motor Vehicles?
That sounds like hell. That's not an acting gig.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. So, in the later '90s of the last century, I graduated college and moved to New York. We showcased in New York and LA, and I had responses in both, but was more interested in New York at the time. Moved to New York, got an agent, got a manager, and started that whole shtick: auditioning, getting my feet wet, waiting tables, doing the whole bit. And I was there for about 7 years, and the most response I had was in the regional market. I did a little bit of film and TV. I never actually worked in I mean, I did showcase work in New York, but and you make a little bit of money in showcase work, but I didn't do a professional theater gig in New York in the 6 years that I lived there. And I would go to a regional market. I'd get back. I'd be back for a couple weeks. I'd audition for another regional gig, and I'd book it, and I'd leave again. So eventually, it felt like I wasn't really in New York. Now, my agents were like, stop taking these gigs, stay here, be here for pilot season, be here for, whatever. And I had and probably still have a hard time saying no to acting work. I feel like, if somebody says yes to me, I'm going to say yes to them. And I also really loved, I saw the country, and I got to know directors and writers from all over the country, but also like, people are jobbing in from New York. So you're in the regions, you're still growing your network of artists that know you and know your work. So eventually it felt like New York's maybe not the place for me right now. I moved to LA for a year, did like one TV gig and produced a theater piece. And then I went and did a Shakespeare Santa Cruz that summer. And I met the woman who is now my wife, Kate, and who's also an incredible actor here in DC. She had a similar trajectory to me, a lot of regional work. And so we were like, well, let's just bounce around for a while. We'll find each other when we can. We'll go to where these jobs are. So I kind of got back on just in the regional train for a while. And then, after a few years, we got married. And then after a few years of bouncing around, we were like, let's try to not be on the road so much anymore. Living out of a suitcase is wonderful and charming and exhausting, and we're not together. So we started to look for a little more stability. We tried New York again. We're there for a year and a half, living in New Jersey. And the gigs were too good. I was getting, things like Clybourne Park in DC, and I was getting Hotspur that Joe Hodge was directing down at Playmakers, and there were gigs that I was like, I'm not gonna not do this. So I was back on the road, and I ended up in Florida doing a gig at a theater called Gulf Shore Playhouse in Naples, Florida. But it felt very far away from the careers that Kate and I had built in the rest of the country. And we decided to come back to the land of more opportunity up in the Northeast. And we were looking at Philly, and we were looking at New York again. Do we really want to go there? But DC had been very good to both of us throughout our careers. Kate decided to get a second master's in Shakespeare and Performance at Mary Baldwin University. And while she was doing that, the closest market was DC. So I was like, I'm going to focus on DC. I'm not going to go anywhere else. And that's when I was doing 3 and 4 and 5 shows a year here. And then when she finished, we decided, well, it's kind to us. It's close to Philly. It's close to New York. If we want to tap into those markets, it's still available. We know that the leadership here likes us, loves us. We have some theatrical homes. We are both company members at Woolly Mammoth. And it just made good sense to come here. I just loved the work that was being done here consistently. I looked around me at the plays that were being picked, at the people who were being picked to produce them and make them. And all of those people jazzed me. So I was like, there's a clear family here. There's work for me here. And so let's go there. Now, of course, we moved here in 2019, officially moved here in 2019. So then the pandemic happened. Like,
I didn't realize it was that recent.
well, I've been working here.
The permanent move.
The permanent move. Yeah. I mean, I've been working here since 2000. I think my first gig was 2008. And then that time when I was kind of focusing on here only, that would have been 16, 17, 18. And so my history here was long, and, I'd had a successful run here, but then it was time to really settle down. And so, yeah, we moved here the summer before COVID.
We'll say like the better part of 9 years, you've been working
Sure.
relatively consistently in the DMV area.
Sure.
How has the market changed since when you first moved to now? Obviously, kind of smack in the middle of that was the pandemic.
Sure.
So you kind of have a pre-pandemic and post-pandemic experience.
Yeah. And I mean, there's the kind of usual changes that happen in a market, which is leadership changes at the major theaters. So, you're bringing in new leadership, which brings in new priorities, which brings in new players, which you have to get to know the leadership. So that's a big thing that I would say is clearly a difference from when I first got here and when I got here. Is there a lot of artistic directors have changed. There definitely was this time when I first arrived that I think DC was really feeling itself. Like they had grown from, I think, 4 or 5 kind of mid-sized theaters to 7 or 8 really big theaters, and 4 to 10 to 12 mid-sized theaters, and then a ton of small theaters. And that kind of vibe, people were excited to be here. There was like report after report from Equity year after year that like, this is where the most contracts are outside of New York and LA. There's, it's like, it's growing, it's consistent. At the heyday of my time here, I could do 5 shows a year, and make the nuts.
Sounds nice.
Like, yeah. And the other thing about it at the time was, if you were lucky enough to be in that core group of people that you mentioned earlier that worked a lot in town, because there was I'm not saying it's an exclusive group, but it is a group that artistic directors wanted to be able to pull from, you would know what your season was well in advance. You would be auditioning a year ahead of time. You would be getting on an offer 18 months ahead of time. So that, and I mean, that was one of the biggest reasons I wanted to come here. I was like, well, I can know what my season is. I can plan, and I can go, oh, well, this came up, and if I could jerry rig this, I can get over here. Like, it was great. That has changed a little bit. I think the pandemic changed a lot of that. New leadership changed a lot of that. The market has changed a lot of that. As you say, COVID happened to everyone. And so I think every market knows that, this kind of thing, the onlineness of it all has changed auditioning. The cost of producing plays has changed how much people are producing. The way that, new artistic leadership that's coming in from New York or London or Minneapolis, that those people are bringing different talent pools and different ideas about what they want to be doing. So DC, as you say, pandemic happened everywhere. DC is going through, I think, the growing pains of post-pandemic, which is very normal. Like, what is returning to the room look like? What are audiences returning to the theater look like? So I would say now in DC still feels like we're figuring out what DC is. It still feels new and young and new leadership, and got to make these new connections, and the programming is shifting a little bit, and we got to address that and think about that. I mean, it's still a very exciting, very dynamic place to be. I'm getting ready. I have 3 shows this season, which is great. I'm very thankful for that, and they're all shows that I'm very excited to be doing. So like it still feels like the core of what I wanted when I moved here, which was consistency, a group of artists that I get to know, but still there's enough change and influx that I'm meeting new artists, and I get access to do plays that are challenging and exciting and will push me and my craft further. And that's all still here.
What you just described is what stuck out to me in my time working in DC. I remember some of our castmates were like, so, Hassiem, like, what show are you doing next? And I was like, I don't know.
I'm going back to New York to audition.
Right. But a lot of them, like, they knew their season.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, like, early in the year, like we audition for all the theaters and, casting happens kind of quickly. And then we know for the year. And I was like, that sounds nice. Like up here, we do it one at a time, like and just to put into perspective, you said in your heyday, you're doing 5 shows a year. You got 3 this season. Like on average, 2 shows. Like if I did 2, like, good equity contracts in a season, like I would feel really accomplished. Like that'd feel great. In the couple of years I've been able to do that, I was like, man, those are some strong years.
Big check mark.
Exactly. And ultimately, you only need 12 weeks for health insurance. So just another measuring stick is like, man, your ability to be on health insurance regularly. And the beautiful thing about the DMV is like, you can live and work there. There are enough large houses. That's a cool stat that Equity said, like most number of contracts outside of, the larger hubs. Minneapolis has the second number of theater seats per capita in the United States.
Dope.
But the big difference, and I'm trying to get somebody from Minneapolis on the show, actually. The big difference, I think, between Minneapolis and DC from the outside, I've been in Minneapolis, I haven't worked there yet, is the number of major equity theaters in DC, a lot more. So like in terms of livable wage theater and health insurance earning weeks theaters, DC by far.
Some other benefits to the DC thing. There are tons of universities. I know a lot of actors who also teach, who that's how they supplement. There's a lot of opportunity for that. There's lots of government, like, patient stuff and like opportunities for actors to do other things than act. But what we don't have a lot of here is the TV and film. There are some casting agents that you can find down in Virginia who do some of that stuff, and obviously you can tap into Atlanta stuff. But that none of that is here, and none of it is shooting here like you would be in New York or LA. That you can pursue a theater career in New York and run to a commercial audition or run to a TV audition and then book it and shoot that, 2 days on a show. To do that here, you're going to have to travel. It's rare that people are shooting in town. And I mean, I know plenty of people here who maintain agents in New York, and they go up to New York and they'll book stuff and they'll go up to shoot in New York. I mean, we're close enough by train and by bus. One of the things about DC that I love is those actors that I talked about, but we're like hired gun actors. We're like New York, you get a lot of generative artists who are, but like, because you've got this group of people that for years were like, oh, I can do 5 or 6 shows and I'm gonna get really good at acting. Like that's what they want to do. That they don't necessarily want to then go, okay, I'm going to write my show now or going to produce this film. Or, I mean, there are definitely those people here. Do not get me wrong. There are hard worker, hustling, do every kind of thing here. But there is a group of actors who like, what I am is a stage actor, and that's what I want to do.
That's fair. And so the market kind of responds to that. Do you currently have, or have you in your time living in the DMV had talent representation?
I do not currently. When I was in New York, I had talent representation. For a little while in DC, there was one agency, and it started and I think benefited the people that were with them. I was not with them, so I can't speak personally to what that is. They were, I think, trying to push their clients out into the world. Like DC is a small enough market that it didn't make a ton of sense to have an agency to serve DC, but to serve to serve, I guess, the producers in DC, that kind of bridge that an agent does, bridging between producer and talent. Um, but I think they were hoping to push the talent further into the world and get them seen in New York and get them seen in other markets. And they certainly were focusing more on television, film, and I think it lasted for over a decade, over 10 years. But again, I'm not the best person to speak to it because I was not represented by them. And that's a long answer to I don't currently have representation.
Well, and that's like, okay, so you're not the best person to talk about representation, but that in and of itself is
Sure.
it paints a great picture of what it means to work in the DMV, in that clearly you don't need representation.
But you do need hustle. I mean, but I think that's true full stop for any actor. Like if we're talking about actors in any market here, like without the hustle, there's only so much an agent can do for you. I mean, you can be very lucky and look and feel exactly right for a certain thing that just shoots you into the stratosphere. But I mean, there were times in New York with my agent where I was like, well, I didn't get those 2 equity shows a year. Like I didn't book that pilot. I didn't whatever. And I was like, well, it's time to go. But as soon as I turned any sort of hustle into the game, something came of it. Like as soon as I was proactive, something came. And so, agents are wonderful to have. And obviously in New York and LA, I think necessary. The argument is clear that is true. But in other markets, I think not as necessary. In DC, not necessary. But to have access to TV and film or voiceovers or audiobooks or things like that, you're going to want to get representation into your corner. Even here in DC.
Copy. Now, I know you spoke very shortly about some friends of yours or colleagues that who have various side hustles, whether it be teaching or patient type work. Would you say that there is enough work for actors? I would say let's encompass work that requires the actor's skill set. So I'd include like this, like patient stuff.
Sure.
I
Yeah,
like did some of
absolutely.
that. I did some of that in college, or like
Yeah.
audiobook theater.
Well,
Is there enough work in the DMV to support oneself as an actor?
I think you could have a almost middle class experience.
Right below the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I know lots of actors who've raised families here. Now, some of those are 2-income households with someone who has a little more of a steady situation. There is a lot of opportunity here. There is, and I will say the contracts here, the minimum payment for the big theaters is very nice. I mean, you're talking better than off-Broadway contracts.
Yes,
100%. And I do think that there are a lot of really exciting young people in this town who kind of followed that boom here and are now trying to figure out what to do in post-COVID reality. And I think there's a lot of interesting startup things happening here. And that kind of opportunity will grow into something that will make you money. I think we were, this is maybe a bit of a tangent, but I think on point. Woolly Mammoth is looking for a new artistic director recently. They are currently looking for a new artistic director. And some of the company members have been getting together to kind of figure out what we want to talk about to the board or the search committee, like what we hope they look for. And in those conversations, we were talking to kind of the old guard, the original company members from Woolly, these people that started it 40 years ago and who now are tremendously well-known actors in the DMV or beyond. And none of them got paid originally at Woolly. Like that was like they were able to do what they did at Woolly and grow it to what it is now because they were all working other gigs, steady gigs. And there's that part of it that I think you forget, that they eventually became actors who did pay their life through acting, but they invested in this place and this concept early, and they built something out of it. And I think that that's always useful to remember as a youngster, that you can, the more proactive you are, the more you are getting in the room and doing it, the more you will do.
Yeah. I mean, nobody starts at the top.
Yeah.
Scorsese wasn't making
Right.
tens of millions of dollars per film when he first started. It was
No.
him and some buddies
Yeah.
and a cheap camera rental.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. We kind of started going in this direction a little bit. I'm gonna bring us back. Cost of living, because
The
that
cost
probably
of living.
goes hand in hand with the whole,
Sure.
can you support yourself?
Sure.
What's the cost of living like? In New York City, it's ridiculous.
And I think it is a city, and it's a government city, and I think it is high. I don't think it's New York high, but it is high. Now, we live outside of DC. We don't live in the district. We live about 45, 50 minutes out, and things become a lot more reasonable. So it depends on how much you're willing to commute. It depends on what you want in your life. I mean, some people thrive in that city life, and they're going to have to figure out how to make their nut living in the city. And some people want to escape that city life and be out in the country a little more.
Gotcha.
And you've got that opportunity here to kind of have different. I mean, there's good transportation, public transportation. There's good. I mean, it's a very walkable city, and the theaters are kind of spread out, so you get to see different parts of the city. I think the cost of living is a city, but reasonable, I would say.
So, like, I think currently the national average income in the United States of America is $60,000 a year. Could someone live in the DMV with that kind of an income?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
Okay, cool.
I believe that, with roommates and apartments and, just like New York, you figure it out, and yes, I think somebody could do that.
What about quality of life? Now, this is kind of, to me, it's different. Cost of living is purely just like financially, can I survive? To me, quality of life is things like cleanliness, access to amenities. Now, we all value different things. For me, for example, it's nature. I was actually just telling my wife, so we just, slight tangent, but still on topic, as you said earlier, we just got back to town yesterday from celebrating our second wedding anniversary, and we went up to the Finger Lakes, which is known for its gorges, where the water's cut through these mountains and carved out these beautiful gorges. And to me, we're at Watkins Glen State Park. It's like the Instagram place where everybody goes to like take pictures because it's crazy. To me, that's number two. The number one most beautiful hike I've been on was when I was working in the DMV, and we did a hike on the Potomac.
Yeah.
I think it was in Alexandria.
Yeah.
That, like,
ooh.
All that.
Maybe out
that's
the
just
Great Falls or something like that.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think it was around there.
Yeah.
That was like, oh my goodness. So, say that to say, like, quality access to, like, quality of life, like good food, outdoors, entertainment. We are entertainers, but things to entertain us. How would you rate DC in terms of quality of life?
Pretty great. You have access to nature. Get on the metro, or again, just cross that Potomac into Virginia on your feet, and you're in beautiful hiking area. But yeah, get on the public transportation, head out, catch an Amtrak. I mean, we've got, we're on the Amtrak Acela line. You can get to anywhere from here. We have 3 major airports. We have, plus Baltimore. There's a lot going on here. The museum culture is through the roof. There's the history of DC, the history of our country, if you're into any of that. I mean, the Library of Congress is like endlessly fascinating. There's a lot of theater here. Obviously, we've talked about that. Any major acts will come through and play. There's, we've got major sports teams here. There's something for everybody. I think there's good music. I do think the food is very good. I think people, and I did this, I lived in New York, and when I lived in New York, it was very New York centric. It was the city, and I still say the city, meaning New York. And it, like, that place offers a ridiculous amount of stuff to everyone. And I think that as the bar is tough to beat. This is definitely a smaller city. This is, it's a different vibe. But I love it. The food is great. There are tremendously good restaurants here that cover a wide spectrum of ethnic food.
Well, because it's the capital, so you have all of the embassies.
Yep.
Kind of have their own thing going on.
Yep.
And they're all in the same area.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's a great soul food scene here. Like the the Black history of this town is incredible. And how that is ever evolving is incredible. So yeah, I think I have felt more at home here than any other big city. I love Philly. I love Portland, Oregon. But something about this place was like, yeah, this is the one. And again, we live outside of the district. And so we have all access to the bay. We have access to like canoeing and kayaking and hiking and like all that kind of beautiful stuff. All the crabs and the seafood and,
we still got to go to that seafood joint you were telling me about.
Yeah, dog.
I got to make a trip out there.
You're always welcome, and you got a place here to stay. Quality of life pretty high, I'd say.
Love it. I got a couple of rapid fires to wrap things up
Great.
for you. What's the worst part about being an actor in the DMV?
I guess what I hit on earlier, that there's not a little more access to film and television. Like it does feel like you are choosing a theatrical path here. Now, I'm down with that because it is the thing I love the most, at least. I've had most success in it. I've done it the most. I've enjoyed the film and TV I've done, but having more access to here would be great.
Okay, best part about being an actor in the DMV?
Getting to work with really talented people over and over again, and being surprised by them and being asked to do challenging work. I mean, some of the bravest things I've had to do have been on stages in DC. It's just, I've never felt like my craft has suffered by the work that I've had to do here. I always come out of a show feeling like I've gotten better.
Last but not least, if there's an actor listening to the show and they live in a major hub or even just a different regional hub and they're kind of struggling where they're at, would you recommend they try out the DMV?
Yeah. I mean, I think what I think about any actor in any market is they should be exploring other markets. The opportunities here are real. The talent pool here is real. The programmatic choices that artistic directors are making are serious. And people are really, I think, trying to figure out how to come out of this COVID thing stronger. And that's a good place to be. I mean, like these 3 shows I'm going to do this season, they're going to challenge me. Like they're going to put me through my paces, and I'm going to be supported and surrounded by other tremendously gifted artists. And what else do you want?
Man, Cody, this one was rich. This was great.
Good.
Also just like not selfishly, like reminiscing on my time in the DMV. And
I don't want to talk more about
with you.
The awesome shit you did in that show. Like you and Ryan were breathtaking. I mean, truly, like, so if people don't know, we did a Tempest together. That's right. Award right there, baby.
I won an award for it.
He did. We did the Tempest. He and another man played Caliban together. Palabolus was part of the creation of that, the dance company Palabolus. And what these 2 young men did was breathtaking and divine. And I mean, it really was a tremendous, and it kicked y'all's ass. Like,
hardest thing I've ever done, but most rewarding. Like you said earlier, that show was a highlight of your career, and it was a highlight of mine. It was truly an incredible experience, and really grateful I was able to meet you and watch you work. Cody, I meant every word when I said earlier, like watching you, I was like, that's what a professional actor looks like. This is someone who is a craftsman, who takes her work seriously, and who shows up not just on time, but shows up bringing the goods to the table. And so thank you for sharing your artistry with me. Thank you for sharing with us, giving us a little glimpse to what it may be like to work in another regional market. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Hassiem. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. And it's very nice to see your face.
All right, guys, if you enjoyed this conversation with Cody Nickell, then you'll love a recent interview I did with Andrea Lang, where we explore the Atlanta market. So be sure to check that out. Thank you all so much for tapping into this episode of The Actor's Instrument. Wherever you're tuning in, please give us a like, follow, or subscribe. It helps out a ton. Shout out to our co-producers and distributors over at Next Chapter Podcasts. We'll be back next Tuesday. Till next time, y'all. Peace.